Hey Thomas, how you doing?
Hey David, how are you, my friend?
It's been a long but a good day. I got to do a bunch of stuff in the garden, and I got to, because I do an organic garden, I got to stand around and kill bugs with my bare hands for about an hour today. There's something very exciting about that on some level.
I was locked up there. I guess the internet's, acting a little crazy here this evening, but hopefully we're through that now, so we'll see.
Yeah. So you are still rocking out all that work up there from the hurricane in northern South Carolina, huh?
Yep, it's not stopping. We're at that, 8 month, 8 month mark, and mass confusion and chaos is still happening. I will say that the areas are cleaning up. It's starting to look a little better. Still a slow process, but that area's had some recent storms, high winds and hail and things like that. And, you get a sense in the community that there's that fear, that PTSD that's happening. And unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about that, but it's really sad. It's
Well, do you notice? I mean, like, is most of the work you're picking up right now, do you notice it's like people have just kind of held out for their insurance company and their insurance, and they've just realized that they can't get a contractor to do what needs to be done for that price, and they're just not getting anywhere? Is that pretty
Yeah,
much?
a little bit of everything. People have had engineers out from the trees on their houses. I think they're. Don't get me started on that. The whole system. There's a shortage of contractors. Right, the good ones are limited, and as soon as Western North Carolina happened, shortly within 2 months, most of the good guys were gone to other states and things like that. Because it's uncommon for Western North Carolina to get this kind of storm, so they felt low hanging fruit somewhere else and go. And I don't blame them. I'm not criticizing, but and a little bit of confusion. There's a lot of what caused the damage, flood or wind. And it was really a perfect storm there because the wind was so high, the canopies on the trees were still there. So it acted like an umbrella. It took down a lot of trees on structures. And, I generally feel like the carriers are trying to do the best they can. I generally feel that way. I really do. But they're not. I don't think we're hitting standards.
I mean, is it just that the damage is, how, like, when I had my fire, for example, my first conversation with my adjuster was it's probably not going to be that big a deal.
Yeah,
And I'm like, well, I don't think that's the case, but okay. But I mean, it's kind of like it's not the will to just not pay it. Okay, and I'm not saying that that's the will there. I'm saying that it has complexity to it, and so the garden variety adjustment they're accustomed to, it stands outside of the norm, which means it stands outside of the reserves. So standing outside of the reserves means that probably you're going to have to go to heroics to get it out, get it above those reserves. I tell you, it's
and I think the carrier engineers up here, I won't speak about particular names, but I think they're one overwhelmed and just, it's an issue that the industry's talking about on both sides. I've never seen a carrier engineer that's to the advantage or accurately displayed so that the insured has enough money to get to rebuild. But I've never seen a insured's engineer say, nope, there's no damage here. So, we've got to figure that out, right? I mean, I have one file right now. I mean, it is obvious. Or four or five trees came through the second level of the house. Four or five, I can't remember. There's still one tree in the middle of the house.
I mean, that's structural damage 101, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
more than like just we're going to replace the roof, right?
Every truss is broken. Every truss in the home is broken. It's about a 2,100 square foot home. And a particular carrier engineer came out and said the walls are out of plumb on the front, load bearing walls. And the carrier engineer came out and said, hey, just pull them back in and you'll be fine. Which, I've had several people. Yes, yes.
Pull them back in.
Just pull them back in, secure them up, take the roofing system off. Now, keep in mind now, the roofing system, every truss is broken and it's sitting like this in the house. Broken trusses falling down, chimneys out of whack, everything's out of plumb. The house is
Just
racked.
put the roof back on and then just squeeze.
Well, no, I guess they didn't understand that Buncombe County up there requires when they condemn the home, they require a permit for the demo, right?
Right.
Life safety issues, things like that, right?
Right.
So just shore up the walls and take the roofing system off, and you'll be fine.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, complete sense. I mean, and the engineer report, and I'm not bashing this particular guy. I think he was, I don't know. I'm not going to, I don't know what happened there. But when I got the report, I was talking to him about, in the code, there's a item substantial damage calculation. He clearly stated in his report that there was no substantial damage. And I'm like, okay, so the wall, yeah, no substantial damage. I said, can you give me an idea how you calculate that? Was just, I looked at it?
Yeah.
Or, I mean, you didn't see the front wall waving and, just ready to fall down. I mean, what? And
Yeah, that's
yeah, I had two different engineers go in for the insured. The first one was like, he was there 5 minutes and he's like, holy shit, I've never seen anything this bad. And then he wrote a fantastic report, accurate, and the other guy did a good job too. The first guy was just a little bit more detailed. So, and I sent, as soon as I got those reports, I sent them to the carrier. Hey, these are our reports. The proof of loss is forthcoming, but let's chat about it. Now they want to send out another adjuster who's not even a large loss adjuster, and they want to have the same engineer come out. And that was a phone call I got yesterday. I'm like, why? What are we doing here? Like, what? I'm not stopping you. If you want to come back out, come on back out. But let's organize this a little better so that we can be more efficient. And if your engineer's already been out there and made his determination, and our engineer's been out there, we've talked about this before, we basically have nothing. So why not, and you and I and some other people have talked about, why don't we hire a shared expert? Hire a shared engineer. We share in the cost, and, we'll go through the selection process, we'll figure all that stuff out, and then we'll move forward with it. And what they say is, I can't see how any competent engineer is going to say that the structure of the second level doesn't have to be just come down. And there's other issues. The house was built in 78. Yeah. It's on a cinder block wall, and those walls aren't filled. So no demo company wants to go in there and take the liability of removing the second floor and the roofing system and, take that responsibility of, additional damage.
Yeah. Incidentally, by the way, you talk about the shared expert. I always say, do any shared expert you want, but if you do a shared expert and for an engineer, you might step yourself off into a treacherous place.
I understand.
Because if you get, I mean, I hate to say this about anybody in our game, but I mean, depending on who somebody works for in our industry, wherever their bread is buttered the most, it seems to affect how they write. And look, I'm not so sure that isn't true on the other side too, okay? And we have this grain of people that's maybe 10% of these guys who just do the work. Just what is. As long as we could get those guys, we're good to go. But
now, just for clarification, this phone call just happened yesterday. Mm-hmm. So I'm just kind of talking about it. We have not presented anything to the carrier about that because, I mean, for that issue, what's the parameters? How are we going to get an agreement on the right individual to come in there? It's a whole nother, add some complexities to the process and all that stuff. There are, from what I feel like there's some individuals out there that are all over, that we all know that work for the carrier and work for the insured. And I think they're truly unbiased. So, I think the damage is that severe. And I just don't understand. I just don't understand why we can have an engineer come out, a professional engineer come out and say, just pull the walls in, plumb them up.
Have you been able to get the county or the city to do letters of substantial damage or any of that stuff? I mean, to actually just speak for the city?
Well, we have not yet. However, when we had our two engineers come in, the insured hired them and had them come in, and they wrote in their reports that it was some substantial damage. So we were, basing everything off that, knowing that basically they have a report, we have a report, and they wash each other out. But we are literally on each side of the spectrum.
Yes.
So to me,
by the way, it is impossible to see the same thing and come to that different of a determination. It is impossible.
I agree.
That doesn't happen. Like you and I could work for nothing but the carrier and you could work for nothing but the insured, and we could walk up to the same loss, and I'll bet you anything. I might say, I don't want to I'm going to get in trouble back at the office if I pay O&P on the roof, but yeah, the roof's got to go and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? We'd come to the same place. Okay.
Yeah.
And if we're not, then there's there's something else. It actually bugs me really, really bad. This particular one thing, this gets my goat so bad. It's like, how do you have all these credentials as an engineer? I mean, you went to school. They taught you do facts. There was no ambiguity about it. And then you get all this work from this guy and you start acting like you write for that point of view, and you work over here and you write for that point of view. And I mean, I almost could see like adjuster and PA writing from different perspectives. Okay. But I can't see an engineer writing from perspectives because they have basic training to just say this is what it is. And I agree that as they opine on things, they may have slightly different manners of repair or think that certain severity isn't there or is there. But we should still know that there is damage. And like engineers do not say just square up the walls. They don't say that. Like nobody says that. That's not
I mean,
there's not a building code on earth that says that you can do that. Like
right.
There's not. I can look through the IBC tonight, and I promise there will be no just
if it's considered substantial damage. If it's not substantial damage, and there's all kinds of calculations for it. There's actually a formula, and in the original report that the carrier sent out was there's no substantial damage. Okay, that's your opinion, but can you give me some meat to that? Explain it to me. I'm not on your side. Tell me why. How did you calculate it? How did you monitor it? Or, how did you come up with your conclusion? And that to me is something that we're required to do that as a PA in the mitigation side. We have to give them all the calculations, metrics, all this and stuff. So why aren't the engineers required to do that? And it doesn't make any sense to me.
I don't get it. And look, we never see the engineers out here talking about this either. Have you ever noticed that?
Yes.
We very rarely see engineers actually talk in public. Because if they talked in public, we would find out what? They would have to be saying something that wasn't true.
That's right. I think there's some organizations out there, David, Doug Quinn at the APA and things like that, and that are really, especially after, what was it, Superstorm Sandy, that, they're trying to hold accountable the accountants and our side as well. Right.
What they did in New York was they put basically you have engineers, all of the people who are available to do the work, and they just click a button and say, send me an engineer now. So they don't have carrier engineers.
Yeah.
They just have engineers. So the guy's not beholden to them. And I think that's awesome. But that was the answer to that. Now, what did you think about that stuff going on in Congress where they were asking the carriers questions?
I think Allstate looked like a bunch of idiots. And I did not see everything. For full disclosure there, I saw some highlights of it, things like that. However, evidently there was some carrier Allstate adjusters, this is out there now, that had told or testified that they changed reports. They came back and said, this is our findings. Allstate, at whatever level it was, said no. Change your report. 2 or 3 people testified. Like I said, I didn't see it. So
yeah, well, it goes back. You know what the whole thing was that I think personally is I think the whole methodology that we're really talking about is all we have to do is let the adjusters adjust.
Yes,
just give them back the job that they trained for. Make them accountable. There's nothing wrong with accountability. You have accountability in your role. You can't write up a $700,000 loss on a $200,000 loss without risking your license. And so all I'm saying is that, if that's all they have to do is let them adjust. And, I hate to say it this way, but they know that. They know that. That's in their own data. I've read it in their own data. They know if you let them adjust, it's the best way not to have alternative dispute and litigation. It's a great way to retain. It's the greatest way to contain your customer, lower your cost of the claim, the whole 9 yards. They know that, but they have decided differently. And if we don't change this sometime soon, it's going to be worse than we think, because what's happening is as they've squeezed the IA, they're lowering the fees for the IA to levels that are substantially less than what I pay my own inspection team. These guys are used to making $200,000 a year, and they're making 70 maybe.
Yeah.
And how are you going to keep any kind of talent pool when they can't make the living that they're accustomed to making for doing the work? And for that matter, they're glorified estimators.
Yes.
Like no adjuster wants to do that. I know some great adjusters. I mean, some top-notch people, they could work anywhere in the industry they wanted because they're just that good.
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, the guy who came and adjusted or estimated my claim whenever I had my fire, I do some umpire work for the guy. He's awesome. Like, I've never seen him put anything on paper that didn't make complete sense. And I don't know.
Well,
I
what
just
it's doing, it's driving out the good folks, right? They can't make an adequate living for their work they're doing. So the experienced guys are going somewhere. Like,
so
hopefully they're
you
coming on
get
our side.
you get a new crew that doesn't know that their $80,000 a year isn't a lot of money. But also, you just got to understand, nobody's staying in that role year after year after year after year to do that. They're not. And I mean, I don't know. I think this is super easy. This is super easy. This is a super easy problem to fix. You just have to have the political will to do it. The insured's Bill of Rights. Okay? Super simple. I'm not looking for advantage. I'm just looking for the basic Bill of Rights. So we decide what the timetable is, the timetable to pay uncontested amounts, and the adjuster adjusts and sets the value of the loss. The carrier enforces the policy. Incidentally, by the way, that was the way it was set up. It was set up to work exactly that way because the insurance company wasn't setting the value of the loss at all. I mean, super simple, right? So all they have to do is just say, you have to, like the adjusters have to adjust. That's it. That's it. Just make a law that says it. Like one, you just like, boom, done. Just absolutely positively done. Like that, like we could stop talking about this. And that is the easiest thing in the world. Here's the big joke. This is the big joke. And I think this is so funny. You know, there are those that will call us biased.
Mm-hmm.
When I am literally advocating for the carrier to make me unnecessary. I'm literally saying, make me less necessary because you allowed somebody to adjust. I mean, like, you know, it's like, I don't know. I mean, I'm just that kind of, I mean, it's just, I mean, if everything worked right, we wouldn't have a job. Okay. So let's be honest. It's okay that it doesn't work perfect. But the truth of the matter is there are going to be complex things that always have to have extra help. And we're going to be able to do the extra help part. But we shouldn't have to go to work for Miss Smith who has a $42,000 claim. We shouldn't have to. We shouldn't have to do anything for her. Nothing, you know? And so I think I do have hope that particular thing will start to get kind of in the public head. Because if you really look at all that was going on in Congress, they kept on saying, well, I kept doing my job and these people kept making me change it. So all you have to do is say, you have to let them do their fucking job. Period. Right. End of story.
Yep.
That's the law. You're not giving anybody advantage. You're not. You're not giving anybody advantage. You're just simply putting the person who's trained to do it out to do it. And by the way, they would have to go back to paying them reasonably.
Yes.
Because you don't want to lose your experienced people. You know, somebody who's been out there adjusting for 15 years, chances are they're pretty good at it.
Yeah.
You know, like, let's face it, you've been in this game about 10 years. You can look at your average loss and be like, yeah, it's going to be about that.
Yes.
You know, nobody says it out loud what they think it's going to be, but they pretty much can do it because you learn that math, that complex math right there in your head.
That's right.
But I think also we have to reckon with one other thing, and my hypocrisy only runs so deep. Okay, we have to talk to our legislators. We have to get to know our legislators. We have to put money in our legislators' pockets. And the last part is the hardest, is we have to put some claims professionals in the seats of government. And I won't do it. I won't.
Yeah, I'm not for that.
And I won't, and you won't, and the next guy won't, and the next guy won't. And I'm just saying that, like, we have to find some people among us who will do that. And I don't know. I think that if we just let the adjusters adjust, it would make for happy claims. And what is a happy claim?
Paid claim.
Closed claim. That's right.
Yeah.
Happy claim.
I do think, Stephen Bush and Doug Quinn and, there's some other folks in there that are really, it's taken up some time. They've invested their time and resources into bringing a lot of this stuff to light. And
yeah.
And some of the adjusters out there that have become whistleblowers, there's one or two of them that are being personally persecuted. And I wish that I understand how the game works, but they have nothing to gain. They're going to lose everything. by coming forward, and they're not going to gain anything. So, the 60 Minutes report, all that stuff, it's catching
Right.
some eyes. And, the other day in Congress, I thought there were some fair questions asked. There was probably one or two that, was trying to drive the point home that could have been worded differently from the congressman. But I mean, it was just, we need some more of this, and we need this not only at the federal level, more so at the state level.
Yeah, we need states to do the things they're supposed to do in regulating these folks. They just have to hey, guys, we're going to let them adjust now. Have a nice day. That's it. Okay, let's go home. Like there's a reform that can actually lower cost. It would actually lower cost. You do know, by the way, I was told by an actuary years ago, if they they ran a test, and if they paid everybody 70% of what the claim was worth in the first 2 weeks after the claim, like 98 point something percent of the people never called them back, never called back for their RCV, never called back for any supplemental or anything like that. They're just done. So literally they could undervalue it and pay it, but pay it quickly, and people leave them alone.
Wow.
Like, I mean,
do you think there's a carrier actually doing that out there? Or are they all playing the same game?
There are some boutique carriers who actually do it. You have to. I mean, one of them I'm thinking of. You have to have $5 million worth of property before they'll write for you. And so that's not for most of us. If I ever have $5 million worth of property, you should come get me and beat me senseless and say it's time to sell some property.
Yeah,
because that would be terrible.
Yeah.
But I'm not telling you to sell everything at some point and just get on a boat. I mean, but I mean, it would have to be just me and nobody left in the world. But no, you got a big week coming up?
Well, yes. And yes, I do. Every week's a big week anymore, right? There's so much stuff going on.
It is.
It's generally a slow time, right? We're preparing.
It's you'd think it'd be the slow time, but like in some ways it's slow. But I mean, like, for example, my estimation firm's doing a lot of large loss work and stuff like that. And there are pockets of the country where they're getting a lot of work from these storms that are happening nonstop. Like I got an umpire gig I'm doing right now where the carrier guy, who is very credible, says there's no damage to the roof. The insured's guy says it needs to be replaced. I mean, they are completely diametrically opposed. Okay. Like, they agree on a bunch of other things on the loss, but not on that. And they got all mealy mouth with me because I said, look, I'm going to send somebody qualified to go look at it. I'm not going to tell them what's wrong with the roof or if there is anything wrong with the roof. I'm not going to tell them what peril it was from. I'm not going to tell them anything. I'm just going to tell them to look at the roof, tell me if there's anything wrong with the roof, and tell me what's wrong with the roof and why it's wrong with it. And I said, and that's all I'm going to do. And I said, and when I get him to send it back to me, I'm actually going to have him send it to you at the same time. So we can then all have a conversation about what the experts said, because that will be my opinion. Because he literally has no dog in the hunt. And they're like, well, you should just decide. I'm like, and I could just decide. I said, but understand what my deciding is going to be. My deciding is going to be leaning towards the insured a bit. And I might be buying a $40,000 roof when a roof is not justified. I said, that's the truth. I don't want to spend somebody's money. I don't want to spend the carrier's money, not one dime of it, that they're not supposed to pay. I do not care what that answer is. I just want the real answer.
That's right.
Like, the insured's guy is just beating my ass in email every day, send me texts like, hey man, why you got to do that? It's like, what are you scared of? And it makes me think that he knows that maybe it's not as damaged as he's saying. I don't know.
Yeah, what's he afraid of? Like, why wouldn't you want this?
Well, my bigger question is this: why didn't either one of these people have that person do that before we got here?
Hearing.
Like, why didn't they just put somebody who was qualified out there to go look at it, so that you'd have something as a billy club in this process? It seems odd to me that so often we think that we are individually able to do anything. We are claims professionals. It's like, there's all kind of crap I don't know. Or there may be something that like, I had a guy go to a roof a few months back, and in this particular roof, there was a public adjuster, an insurance adjuster, an engineer, an appraiser, and an appraiser. And all of these people made a determination on the roof. And not one of them had been on the roof. Not one. Okay? Because it was a roof, it was a metal roof that was kind of had a good pitch on it, and it just didn't, nobody wanted to walk on it. It's a little dangerous. So I hired a roofer to go do my inspection. And I had already written my estimate, and I wasn't given the roof because I couldn't see from my vantage point damage to the roof. This guy brought me back 91 different things on that roof that were damaged. He actually went in and he found H clips that had been pulled up and were now sitting underneath the thing. He had movement on these panels, and he said, and I didn't tell him one thing about it. And he says there's like 5 locations here that are just like contractor defect stuff. The rest of these are definitely wind damage. And I ended up buying the roof. And like, I don't feel bad about buying the roof. What I'm aware of though is I wasn't going to buy the roof because I was going to make the same bullshit decision that everyone else had made. A determination without actually being able to inspect it. And the truth is that guy could inspect it at a level I couldn't.
That's right.
I mean, he understands how to install that roof. He's done it a bunch of times, and he understands how to find it. And I mean, he didn't do one single thing. Like, he wasn't after anything, nothing. Like, I sent him on another one just the other day, and he's like, "Nah, I didn't damage." You know, I mean, like, I don't know. I just think we ought to use these people sometimes just because it's good to be able to defer your opinion to somebody who's more qualified than you.
Absolutely.
And you know, by the way, remember we've talked about it before. When we have an engineer report, it kind of cancels out the engineer report. You're starting at 0.
Yes, I know.
Peer review, answered with a peer review, cancels a bad peer review out. It's the same basic function. And we need people in the industry to be able to go get a peer review on their work so there's no confusion about what they're doing. And the other thing I wanted to say is...
Yeah, but that defies that particular individual, an adjuster, a roofer, or whatever the case is, a mitigation guy, is not doing something right. They've got that mentality.
Well, yeah, it's like the guy who's a cop that just thinks that everyone is breaking the law. They just haven't broken. Everyone's a criminal. They just haven't been caught yet.
That's right.
You know, but I mean, understand too, like that peer reviewer who's paid $20 an hour, if he's like really up his food chain, they get 13 normally. Okay.
Jesus.
I only know this because I read the advertisements, okay? But understand, their job is not to say they did everything right. That's not their job. There is nowhere in their job description that it says that you just got to go say that everything's done right. It says you're going to have to find stuff to cut. And, you know, it's that age-old thing, man. How do I fight you on your data when I wasn't there when you collected it? How do I adjust your claim if I never walked in your property? How do I do that really well? And the answer is you didn't. I mean, that's the answer is you didn't. And all I'm advocating here is that we do this in a way that lets the adjusters adjust, and we get all the engineers and we get them in a room somewhere and say, "Hey, you don't have to write for anybody anymore. Just write it. You're good."
Yeah, that'd be nice.
I say that often there's all these members of the claims tribe wear the same jersey, and then I'll always say, well, maybe not the engineers, because I mean, think about it. You have to estimate, and they get to opine. They just have an opinion, but you don't really get to have an opinion.
No.
And I mean, you've got to state the value of the loss, not to state the value you think of the loss is, but state the value of the loss. I mean, your estimate goes on a POL, right? About the strongest piece of paper in the entire claims file. But one thing's for sure, we're not going to fix this tomorrow.
Nope.
Probably not the next day, and probably not 10 years from now. But we could still want it to be that way, and we could still work to that end.
Yeah.
And I think we could do this without people going to jail.
Well, the people that are,
Doug Quinn at APA says as soon as somebody's doing the walk of shame, things will straighten up. And I disagree with him on one level. I don't think that's going to fix the problem. I think that's just going to make the games more well documented. Okay. I think that you fix this with statutory work, and you just say adjusters have to adjust. You're done. And then it could be like it was 20 years ago.
Yeah. Carriers were making just as much money on a percentage basis than if you do a comparative and, cost of funds and all that stuff. And
the carriers had one of the most profitable years to date on the year we had Rita and Katrina.
Wow.
I mean, like, nobody seems to understand that if you're State Farm and you're insuring in 27 states, I mean, you making some bank because not all those places are getting damaged. That's just actuarially strong to do that.
That's right.
And I think that I mean, one of the problems with like some of these carriers, like for example in Florida, is if you only work in Florida, you can't spread your exposure.
That's right.
And it's super simple. I mean, most of the carriers, like there was one carrier that went under. They just decided that the panhandle of Florida hadn't had any real major problem in years, and so it probably wouldn't. And so they wrote most of the policies in Northwest Florida, and then they got absolutely pounded because that's all that was all they were covering. They weren't covering anywhere else. And it was just like,
isn't that basic principles that were taught?
Yeah, like when you had to take your adjuster test, that's one of the things they went over. That was that's like in the first paragraph, first like chapter. You have to spread out your risk. And I just think it's funny because I mean, like, it's basic. So
yeah, can you imagine Walmart having one supplier or two or three for produce and soft goods and everything else? Doesn't make any sense.
Could you imagine a restaurant that you go to and they didn't tell you when they were going to bring you your food? And when they brought you your food, it was only a third of what you ordered. You would never go there again.
Never, ever.
Imagine if you had life insurance. You had to make a life insurance claim. And they were like, we're going to pay you 20%.
Because we feel like it. Yeah.
Yeah, but you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't do that. And it's and by the way, that somebody will comment on this and say that we're biased because we talked negatively about a behavior that's a common behavior with a carrier. When the truth is, we talk about bad behavior of the people in your tribe. You freaking PAs. You got the cabinet kickers. People are like, hey, I got you the cabinets. We're good. We got the people who sign and drive and just don't really do anything and just get their fee.
Yes.
And then you got the guy who goes in and writes an estimate that's 3 times what the file is, so he can hopefully get half that and still run the board. And then you have the guy who actually just goes out there and does his job. But the truth is, you're probably in like a 20% club. Like there are some really good used car dealers. There really are.
I agree.
But you could go to 100 and only find a certain number in there because you're going to get screwed a lot. And I hate that for PAs. I do. I hate it. But I mean,
how do we fix that, David? I think more requirements to become a PA. There's no barriers of entry, right? They're very limited.
This is the same no matter what barriers of entry there are. Okay. Like people that have to do apprenticeship and all that, it's the same thing. But it's the same problem you have in all things. Okay. Like if you went to work to make money and that was the only reason you went to work, it changes what you do at the work.
Absolutely.
If you went to work to do the good thing that had the byproduct of making you money, you prosecute the work differently. So the problem is you just have a certain number of people who looked at this and said, wow, I can make good money doing that. I can do the math. I make $500,000 a year doing that. That'd be good. Yeah. Okay. But we have I introduced you to I don't mind using this, Mark Lancarrick, public adjuster. And one of the things I've worked with him for a long time, like very long time. And one thing that I always loved about the way he does his job was he starts with saying to his insured, hey, I'm going to do everything I can to get everything paid here. But just because I ask for it doesn't mean I'm going to get it. And we're not after anything other than to get what you need to get done here. So I'm going to start by asking the carrier for things that we can agree to so that we can get you started here. And understand, if we go at this, we can always go back if we need more money. And he uses that tool as a PA to just adjust the claim, but do it in a way that's not to get you spun to oblivion, Like he's just reasonable. And a lot of the adjusters that he works with just recognize that and are like, yeah, let's get this done. Even desk adjusters do that with him. And I mean, he's had a practice doing that for a lot of years. Some guys would say he's not doing a very good job for his client. He's not maximizing the claim. No, he's not maximizing the claim. He's looking for the exact dollar that's necessary to do the job. That's all he wants in the whole world. And it's almost like he can't see it any other way than that way. And I wish that more people could do that. that I'm just after what's real here, and that's all I want here. I mean, I don't like I know like certain guys in the industry will tell their insured, you're not going to have one single dollar left over when you're done. Not one. Just know that. That's how this works. Not
Yes,
$1.
that's right.
And I think that we need to train people around that, around the fact that it is your job to not game anything, but literally cover what it really what is.
What you would think, I mean, listen, if I have a $50,000 loss, doesn't matter the amount, and I put it in for $200,000, that's going to slow the process down dramatically. So now you got an insured that's upset with you. You've got no credibility. Okay, there's going to be some line items. It could be a different line item used there. It was, post incorrect. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking just bullshit fraud. Throwing it against the wall and see what sticks. At the end of the day, you're doing no justice for yourself and or the insured. Why do that? I tell
Look,
my insureds, listen, I can bring them to the trough, but I can't make them drink the water, right? But I don't want them to pay one dime more than they're supposed to or one dime less than they're supposed to. That's it.
I had an appraisal I did long ago where the actual umpire, by the way, stayed in the hotel that we were doing the appraisal on, not realizing it was the hotel that we was doing the appraisal on.
Oh, wow.
And so and the owner of the hotel told us that this one building, which my umpire had stayed in, hadn't had one room one day since the storm that wasn't occupied. He hadn't lost any revenue whatsoever because there was no problems in there. There was 2 windows broken and they had those fixed the same day. Like that was it. And in the estimate that I have from the PA on that, there is almost no repairs in that building. But there is $900,000 worth of HEPA vacuuming. $1,000. That's what it was. It's like, and I'm like, well, we're going to be pulling that out of the estimate. It's just, I mean, and basically, I mean, like it turned into like a $500,000 loss. Okay. Legitimate $500,000 loss. Okay. Turn in the award, finish it off. And lo and behold, they just decide to go to the court and say they want to set aside the appraisal award because it was wrong. Now understand, their appraiser and the umpire signed the award. What do you think's going to happen when they bring us in to talk about that? What do you think's going to happen? The truth of the matter is, I talked to the carrier because I was asking about, did they pay the bill? Because I hadn't been paid for my work. And the carrier said, dang, I wish I had known that. I would have paid you directly, which I thought was pretty good. And you know what the carrier told me? They said, if we had this number to work with, we'd have paid it 2 years ago.
Yep.
Like what you guys came up with was a reasonable number. Like it was pretty close to what our reserves were, because we actually did look at this pretty closely. And the only reason we didn't pay that was because in this case, the PA was pitching such a fit for all this huge money. So we were just kind of waiting for like the next phase of this, I mean, like,
exactly.
But I don't know.
There are a lot of great PAs out there.
Oh God, yes.
I mean, look, listen, I talked to some of these guys and we're driving down the road, coming back home, 8, 9 o'clock at night. And we're talking about different things on the proper way of doing things. I think I drive them crazy because I'm usually the one calling them. But
but there are a group of people that are the best people on earth. They really are. And I think we just have to continue to be that kind of credible person so that we put more people in behind us who are like that. I say like in an appraisal, in umpire work, I tell all my people, we cannot take the job. We cannot take the job unless we are willing to lose the client. We have to be willing to do that. And if we're not willing to do that, then we can't take the job, because that means we can't do our job the way we're supposed to do it. And I think that's the way we have to do everything. And, I think that UPAs are like superheroes to begin with, because you deal with people on a level that I can't do. I can't do it. It's not in me.
I don't think it's not enough credit, but
okay. No, it's not in me. It's like you sometimes get a call at 8 or 9 o'clock at night with somebody who's like really scared, and you don't have a lot of answers for them. You can tell them you're swinging for the rafters, but you don't have a lot of answers for them. And I think you guys are superheroes because you were able to do that and maintain your sanity at the same time, and help to ameliorate that in some way. Like that's like, well, look, when I worked as a general manager of a public adjusting firm just so I could learn that side of the business. 20 years ago. And I learned that when they send people to at 45 days in a hotel, somebody's going to call you from the Walmart parking lot saying we're getting a divorce.
Yeah. Hey, listen, David, this is a lie. I tell folks, up in Western North Carolina, I've got several married couples. Some are shorter term, some are longer term. And, we're all sitting down to get collectively together. And I tell them, listen, this is going to add so much stress to your relationship that you have to remember that. And I feel like I'm a counselor, but like I feel it's our obligation to explain this because we've seen it before.
Oh, if they have it's trauma. It's gonna suck.
Yeah.
I always think about this. I always think about this one guy. I had like 200 people. Like after my mother died 25 years ago. I was standing there, at the church, and people were just going by and saying, giving me their kind words. And a friend of mine walks by and says, "Yeah, I got nothing for you. This just sucks." And that's the only thing I remember.
Yeah.
Because it was the most authentic thing I was told. And I mean, like, you kind of have totally insured, like, this really just sucks. It's terrible.
Yeah.
I told somebody one day that I said, this is like being invited to a party that you didn't want to go, and you have to go because you have to bring the food.
That's right.
Like it's you're going to do this, and even though you don't want to do it, you're going to do this. Oh man, well, I better get something to eat. I got a little hot today. Probably I didn't eat all that I should.
Nice. A little late for you to be eating too, isn't it?
It is, but it's the weekends. We'll be fine.
Are we off schedule on the weekends?
Yeah, just it's okay to be off schedule on the weekend a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's because in my world, Sunday is the first day of the week. So I mean, it's no matter what you do this time tomorrow night, Sunday, it's Saturday right now. To this time on Sunday is just absolute game on. And much as I wish that wasn't true, it is.
That's right.
It is.
Exactly right. You wouldn't have it any other way.
I don't know. I think that I still contend that we get along so well because we're in the same, we're absolutely crazy. I mean, I want you to remember that next week you are going to be told no more than you're going to be told yes by a lot.
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
And it's not going to phase you. And normal people cannot be told no thousands of times and be okay with it. They just can't. And we have that characteristic in our industry, and it's a weird characteristic, but it is a weird kind of thick-skinnedness. And I don't think it's thick skin. I think it's just generally crazy that we don't perceive no.
Well, it must be a positive trait that we have. And, all of us, in the claims tribe, because, this affects, and then I'll let you go. This affects the independent adjusters, the adjusters that are working for the carrier. You don't think that eats their ass up, excuse my French, when they have to tell Miss Susie that this is the only thing they're getting?
Yeah.
They lose sleep at night too.
Yeah, it sucks. You gotta have a level of, and I talked to a desk adjuster about that one day, about 2 weeks ago. And she told me something. She says, I don't like the level of detachment I have to maintain in my job because it's kind of like putting things in jars. Eventually they're going to break. And she just said that, like there's an awful lot of people in our industry that has to spend a lot of money in counseling. So I'm good with that. I'm good with that. I'm glad that they know that they got to launder their karma somehow.
That's right.
So, all right, man. Well, look, I appreciate talking to you, but I mostly appreciate that you do work at a level that most would learn from, because you do not have an ego to say that you know everything. You do have an ego to say that you are perfectly willing to find out. And that is beautiful. And at the end of the day, just remember, there's nobody in the industry that will not ultimately respect somebody who does their job well.
That's right.
And does it credibly. And, I have, as much as I have the Steve Badgers of the world that screw with me, I have people sometimes call me from the carrier and say, hey, did you write this estimate? It looks like you. And I say, yeah. And they go, okay, I'll approve it. Because they know that I wasn't playing any games.
That's right.
And like that's a really good feeling that you like seed time and harvest does show up. But one thing's for sure. I mean, there's always going to be people out there that feel threatened because we can be this way. They're going to be threatened by the independence not to have an agenda. And that's that's a shame. But I mean, there's certain people that don't do that. I mean, also, I mean, I was in my wife's rose garden, and I could put a pretty picture up on Facebook of her rose garden, and people would probably have a political conversation about it.
Yeah. And you know, David, you know how much I appreciate what you've taught me, your availability to me. I mean, before we really even started talking, I was texting you, David, how do I do this? Like this doesn't make sense to me. So, and
I've
I
had,
remember specifically at 2 a.m., I saw you online and I'm like, I got to know how to do this. And you answered that telephone.
yeah. Well, and the thing is, it's just this. It's just like I've been doing this for 30 years. Okay. So, I mean, I've just seen a lot. And if I can't answer it, I usually know somebody who can answer it. One of the reasons why I get along so well with David Sweet is where my knowledge ends, his begins, when it's very, 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 very minutely technical things. And I have a great appreciation for what he does because, you know, we need those, we need those people. Matter of fact, I was beating on the engineers earlier, but I love when an engineer can come in and say, okay, this is how we have to do this because this span has to be this and this span has to be this, and we can do this way and this way. I've got a report coming in this week on one that's a building that's about 120 years old, and it has avenue roof, but the way the structure's made, I don't think that I can get a permit to redo the roof. And so I'm going to have a engineer of record that can actually say this is how it's going to happen. And I don't have any notion of what he's going to say because I don't know what the appropriate repair is. It's true. I don't. By the way, I do think it's funny. My opposing appraiser had an engineer that works for a certain spreadsheet making building consulting company. And she has actually said in open court that she's afraid of the public adjuster on this claim, on another claim at another time, and that she wouldn't complete her inspection because she's scared of him and she wouldn't get out of the car. So like she pretty much made herself where she shouldn't be doing anything that he's affiliated with, right? I mean, nothing. So whenever it gets to the umpire, I'm gonna be like, hey man, you know, like she has an issue with my people, you know, but it's just really funny. No, the public adjuster got into a little bit of legal trouble, and one of his charges at some point was that he got in a fight. He's not violent any more than you or I are violent because of what we did when we were 19 years old. This particular public adjuster, it's the greatest. It is simply the greatest deposition I've ever watched in my entire life. He started off his career in the world as a professional breakdancer.
Professional breakdancer?
A professional breakdancer.
Nice.
Okay. We can go to YouTube and we can actually watch. So he says so they asked him about his professional history. And he says, well, I started off being a professional breakdancer. And they're like, look, you need to be more serious about this. He's like, I've got the YouTube. I can show you. And then immediately following that, they asked him, they said, have you been convicted of a felony? And he goes, no, I've been convicted of 3. And, you know, like that cue up to the whole thing is just, I mean, I'm sorry, but that is just too much fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I asked him, I said, you enjoy that, don't you? He goes, oh yeah. Because I mean, he's no punches about it. I mean, he made some mistakes when he was young.
Sure.
So anyway, but like,
go eat.
All right, you take care, bud. It's good to see you.
Appreciate you,
Have
man.
a good week. All right.